Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Williams. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is, at Egberto Williams. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Williams, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. Look, let me tell you, I'm starting out with not knowing a few things happening because you know what? I just realized I could not hear our intro. And I actually did that yesterday just fine. So right now I am flying blind. But you know what? When you are in this kind of business, as long as you see those numbers moving, telling you that, yeah, people can see you, it is all right. Today we have a great program for you, folks. We have a wonderful program for you. It's called Red States Blues. Author Dr. Matt Grossman, The Ineffectiveness of the State Conservative Policies is what we're going to talk about. And the subtitle of the show is Politics Done Right. Interview Dr. Matt Grossman about his new book, Red State, Blue State. It will give both progressives and conservatives a pause, as it shows control of any state is not as effective as one would think. Exactly. It's not as effective as one would think. Matt Grossman visits with us to discuss his most apropos book, Red State Blues. Before we got into the meat of the Grossman books, we discussed the breaking news about Trump's potential impeachment. Both conservative and progressives will get a lot out of this book. It is a read I enjoyed, while I think the author is more objective than necessary, and I really mean this dude was much more objective than I think he needed to be. But you know, it likely lends him more credibility on all sides. I mean, for progressives like myself, many will sit down and say, there we go, another centrist talking. I don't think so. I think what he tried to do with the book is just lay the numbers out. In the interview, you're going to see a part of it where he states that when I told him, well, you know, red states are debtor states, red states are dependent on blue states, red states, the people are less intelligent in the less states, not because inherently they are less intelligent, but because of the conservative policies. He said, well, you know, they could probably make a list as well. They could say that in blue states, the income inequality is horrendous. And I sat down and I said, damn, this guy is really going down the middle because what he said was right. But I mean, there's proportionalities, I think, that he discounts. Anyway, Matt Grossman is the director of the Institute for Public Policy and Social Research, an associate professor of political science at Michigan State University, as well as senior fellow at the Niskanen Center. He is a regular contributor to FiveThirtyEight. He has published analyses in the New York Times, the Washington Post, and Politico, and hosts the Science of Politics podcast. He is the author of Asymmetric Politics with David Hopkins, Red State Blues, the Not-So-Special Interest Artists, and Artists of the Possible in Campaigns and Elections, as well as a dozen other journals. Well, today is Wednesday. You know something? I speak Spanish and English, okay? Spanish is a language that is so much more easy than English. Wednesday. Today is Wednesday. Why do you say Wednesday? That is Wednesday. Have you ever thought about that? Wednesday. I mean, I sit down sometimes and I am reading words and I'm like, you know, Wednesday? Anyway, today is Tamara's Wednesday. Tamara Shealey's Wednesday. You know who Tamara is. She's a regular of the show. What is she going to talk about today? You know, we didn't discuss what she was going to talk about today, so I am concerned. I am scared, but you know what? I kind of have a hunch what she's going to bring up, but we should have an interesting conversation. And what I'm going to say right now is let's go ahead and get busy with Mademoiselle, la señora, or señorita. I think she's a señorita again right now. So I'm going to say, vámonos a hablar con la señorita Tamara Shealey. Tamara, how are you doing today?
Good afternoon, Egberto.
Stop for a while, Tamara. Guess what's happening? I think we are having a little problem, so I need to change a frequency here to get you on, and I'm going to do it like now. Let's hear you now.
Hey, Egberto. Good afternoon, Politics Done Right family.
Good afternoon. So how are you doing, my dear?
I'm good, Egberto. I promise you, I was laughing at you.
You were oh, you know, why are you going to laugh at your friend?
First of all, I realized how fast you talk. Egberto. I mean, people are trying to keep up. Politics is a hard enough thing to kind of grasp, and you talk so fast.
Okay. You know what is so interesting is you are so right. You know, when I'm at KPFT, I have to say, and please, folks, donate to KPFT 90.1 FM 713-526-5738. And then they'll be like, Egberto, could you please count your numbers so that they can call in and so that you can make your quota? So
yeah, I just realized how fast you talk. I did not realize it until just now.
Well, let me tell you what happened. When there's so much happening, Tamara, and you have to get all this stuff out, you realize, first of all, something. All you guys are geniuses. All you guys are smart. So in as much as I'm speaking fast, you're understanding everything that I say, and that means you're putting so much more in your mind. Either to refute and say, Egberto, shut the hell up, you don't know what you're saying, or otherwise. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm good, Egberto. Watching everything that's happening with this Trump impeachment, quote unquote, the grandstand. Some people are saying it's kind of like grandstanding. It's like they want to see this thing happen for real.
Well, you know, I think they should have been grandstanding for a very long time. I think it's long overdue. I was against impeachment back in the Russian report, not because I don't think he needed to be impeached, but because and I think you and I discussed that, the Democrats dropped the ball. They were supposed to be ready as soon as that document came out and said, check this out, this is what it says. Instead, they allowed Trump to get the narrative ahead of schedule, and he won. Everybody, if you ask any conservative right now, good conservatives, good Trump people, you ask them about the Russian stuff, they think it was a hoax. You know, and the reason why is we didn't come out and really hit it like we meant it. We just came out. You know what I mean? So
messaging is
what are your
important.
thoughts? I'm interested.
Yeah, messaging is important, and you have to, when these things happen, you have to get on it immediately, or else you really do give. They gave Trump a lot of room and a lot of room for people to make their own interpretations instead of this is what is going on and here's the narrative. They didn't do that.
Exactly. So I think they learned their lesson, because guess what? They're talking now, and this is amazing to me, right? They're actually talking about, hey, we want to have articles of impeachment by November. And I'm sitting down there and I'm like, oh, really? Don't go too fast now. Don't go too fast. Because let me tell you, yes, I want Trump impeached, but I don't know that I want President Pence. You know what I mean? I want Trump impeached, and I want the Senate to do what the Senate is going to do. The Senate is going to go out there and they're going to play around, and they're going to do a whole lot of crap. And then by that time, it's going to be election time. And, you know, I mean, this can play out in a lot of ways, because here's a dirty little secret, Tamara. I went over and I started to read some of the report. I haven't read the whole thing because I had to prepare for this show. But I went ahead and started reading it, and I'm going to tell you, for those people who don't want to see anything wrong, they're not going to see anything wrong. You see what I'm saying? Because if you take a look at the report, Trump is not very smart, but he's also not he's what we call in Panama charlatan. What that is he knows how to lie. He knows the framework of people's minds, so he knows the key words to use to get you to think a certain way. And if you're of limited information, it works. You know. And
I agree. I agree with you there.
And you know, so I mean that part honestly concerns me, right? So we're going to need, guess what, Tamara? We're going to need you to do your job.
What's my job, Egberto? I think all of you and I both have a job to continue to have this independent media and continue to tell the truth and spread the word. That's our job, not just my job.
Okay, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, you mean our job?
Yeah, but you know, I talk very little about. I try to limit me because it's always we, right? So.
It's us. It's those of us that are diligently, like you are doing this. I'm so impressed, Egberto. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. This man, you do this YouTube, Instagram, Periscope. Like
you have two boys. You have two boys.
They're almost grown. Well, one's grown and one is approaching grown.
You have two Gen Zs and a younger one in your home. Mm-hmm. I have a daughter as well. We love our kids. Mm-hmm. We want what's right for our kids. Mm-hmm. If we done screwed up this country for these kids for the next generation, it's our duty. Mm-hmm. I mean, we got to do it.
That's a pretty heavy weight to carry.
It's our duty.
I know it is, and it is totally our duty. It is totally our responsibility to, not do what previous generations, I believe, Egberto, have done to us, where they kind of dropped the ball. Didn't pass the baton. It's a lot of people that are in office that need to go, but are still sitting there, and a lot of policies that are dated. So I'm with you, Egberto. Those of us that understand this, we do have an obligation. Yes. And independent media is so important right now.
Yes, we have to do it. And what I'm happy about, though, is I see people stepping up. I mean, you stepped up, I stepped up, and a lot of other independent media stepped up. Yesterday, I was at KPFT, and there are so many of these programs on the network. In fact, I have a secret that I'm going to let out that it's too early. But there is an internet radio show or internet radio station that called me up a few weeks ago and said, "Hey, Guy, we would love to syndicate the show under our network, right?" I mean, this is just it doesn't. You don't make any money doing this stuff.
I know, but I like the sound of it.
It just gives you, it gives you a larger audience, but you don't make any money because the progressive media does not have. None of the aggregators have any money. The only money they have is to keep that station alive. They don't have any money to pay the people on that station. So I don't know if you remember, we spoke many times about us. 208, I'm going to come to you in a little bit. We've spoken many times about, expanding the horizon, but individually you have to go out there and, to put it bluntly, you have to go out there and hustle in this, to keep your progressive media going. You don't have much choice. That's all you got.
And that's why we can't be shy in asking for support. I mean, we have to ask, and we have to encourage our listeners and our audience to really support, because this is a lot of work. There's a lot. I read so much, Egberto, that sometimes I'm like, I don't want to read anymore. I don't want to. I want to. It's like I want to shut my brain off, and I want to be normal. Like we're not. Honestly, I don't even think we're that normal, because we spend so much time consumed with making this right for the rest of the world that we kind of forfeit having like a real life.
And you know what? But you're right. We forfeit having a life as other people know it. But the truth of the matter is, we enjoy doing what's right. Tomorrow, folks, I got to tell my folks, tomorrow I'm heading off to, where am I going again? Utah, Salt Lake City, Utah. I forget.
How do I know, Egberto? I remember.
Yeah. And then the next month I'm going to DC conferences, folks. So I'm not sure if I'm going to have a show tomorrow. Maybe, I don't know, if I'm sitting down in the airport, I may flap out my phone and have a little show or something. We don't know. We'll figure that out. But anyhow, and then the next month it's going to be DC. But let me tell you something. That is how the progressive space gets things done. Mm-hmm. We have to get together wherever we can, whenever we can, to get these to move this stuff forward. But anyway, Tamara, we are at 14 minutes, so why don't you start telling me what you want to tell me?
Don't make our caller wait, Egberto. You don't want to bring him in?
That's true. I'm such a bad person. Caller 208, you're on, and thank Tamara. Can you hear me?
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, I'm going fine. Who do I have the honor of speaking with?
My name is Joe. We've spoken before on a couple occasions.
Talk to me, Joe.
Well, I mean, activism, progressive media, it's all tied in together. And, I just love the fact that you're always calling it like it is. I love the fact that you're including people's perspectives. I love the fact that you're willing to listen to the alternate point of view.
Absolutely.
Without necessarily feeding into all the same, right-wing talking points that everybody always clings to defend the corruption that we see in our government.
Well, I mean, I look. First of all, let me tell you, I appreciate you for listening to us. That's the first thing I want to tell you. I want to put in a request that you share us as well. In other words, as you see things that you like, you share us. And not only that, the things that you don't like, the things that you have complaints about, make sure and come back to us and let us know. Because you know what? The difference between us and the other networks is that we listen and you have access.
Yeah, and as you listen to all this dialogue going on about this Ukraine phone call, the whistleblower transcripts, all of this, I mean, at what point do we start holding not only the Republicans but the Democrats accountable for not doing what needs to be done? The oath is to defend the Constitution of the United States, to defend our democracy. It is not to protect your job. It is not to protect your donors. It is not to protect this president. Yeah, how do we appeal an attorney general? How do we impeach an attorney general under these terms, given his behavior?
You want to chime in?
Yeah,
Tamara?
how do we impeach this president?
Tamara, you want to chime in?
Oh yeah, holding the Democrats and Republicans accountable and responsible. Yeah, absolutely. I think we have to, continue to be a force to be reckoned with, and when they're not right, we call them out on it. I mean, and that's what this independent media space is all about, where your traditional spaces, they tend to go along sometimes, go with the flow. But those of us that are true activists, we have to continue to speak truth to power.
Absolutely. So, and let me tell you one other thing, right? That I want to add to that, and that is one of the things that you'll find with the type of media that we do, sir, is that we try to be, we don't go down the middle. Definitely, we are lefties out here. I don't know if you are or not, but you have a space no matter what you are with us as well. But here's the thing. It does not matter what goes on unless all of us engage. And when I say all of us, I'm not just talking about lefties or progressives. I'm talking about the conservatives and independents. If you notice, what we try to do here is we try to bring everybody in. In fact, what Tamara is working on with ADOS, it's only going to be successful if she also gets some other people from the other side in. And I think she's doing a damn good job of that, even though I disagree with her. But I mean, she's doing a darn good job in what she's doing. Anything else you want to add, sir?
Yeah, just one last thing. Activism and progressivism are not exclusively right or left wing ideology. To be progressive is just simply to acknowledge the fact that as a nation, we are not perfect. We have room to grow. We have room to improve. We need to improve the way in which we include people in our democracy. We need to be progressive in our viewpoints with regards to equality and the fact that all people in this country, regardless of the life they live, provided, of course, that they are not compromising or taking advantage of others, have the same rights, privileges as every other single American.
Sir, what is your name?
End of discussion. It doesn't need to be a debate as to whether or not another human being has the right to be a human being.
Absolutely. Sir, what's your name?
Why is that still in debate? Joe.
Joe, I'm going to let you go now, but that piece that you just said there is an important piece. So you're going to see that on our website in your voice pretty darn soon. I love what you had to say, brother.
Just one last thing.
Yes.
One last thing.
Real
to
quick.
Everybody out there listening, to the people who are listening and paying attention to progressive media and alternate media sources out there, you also have a responsibility. Share the information. Share the awareness as you come across it. Share your understanding as you reach it. Because unless we speak, we will forever be silenced by this government.
Thank you so kindly, Joe. You have a wonderful day now.
You too. Thank you very much for everything that you
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Whoops, I took him off too quickly. I appreciate it, and you have a wonderful day.
Okay. I think he was so correct. We haven't gotten it right as a nation. And this is where we go into, repairing, restoring the damage and just doing, trying to be better. Progressivism, that I really appreciated his definition, because that's what the ADOS movement is all about. I know you don't.
No, but totally like I tell you, I'm an ally.
That's what it's about. I know you are. And it's really about, how do we fix the damage? How do we repair this damage? And I can appreciate the caller with his definition of progressivism. That was good.
And Tamara, I forgot to tell you, we hadn't spoken in a while, but I actually interviewed an ADOS group here during the Democratic debate when I was at the Democratic convention, and I want you to listen to it. I don't have enough time to play it now because the next interview that comes after you is too long, but I'll blog it out there and pass a link on to you. But before you go, I need to tell you, Raynard Blake is in from Lansing, Michigan on YouTube. He says, greeting and peace from Michigan. We also have Masticator. Masticator is one of my nemesis on YouTube. He says, LOL, the unhinged left still believes in Russian collusion. He's my brother, I'm sorry. Masticator, I love him. I don't know who he is, but he's here every single day on YouTube. I love you, brother. You know it. Raynard Blake comes back and he says, could Pence be impeached too? Yes, he could. Of course, I think, I don't know how the dupletta would work, but he can. Then, of course, another resident conservative that speaks up often is Mike Cisak, another guy I love. All relevant components of the department agreed with this legal conclusion, and the department has concluded the matter, she said. Okay, I'm not sure what you're talking about there, Mike Cisak, but I know you're going to let me know about it pretty soon. Raynard Blake says, with Trump, like finds like, weak minds each other. And then Masticator comes back. Y'all do realize that if your pipe dream of removing Trump, then Pence become president. Oh, God.
That's what you said in the beginning, Egberto. It could get worse.
And then Masticator has a message for you, Tamara. He says, no, the ADOS movement is about money. Y'all want free money for something you never experienced from people who never enslaved.
Because we have experienced the repercussions of slavery to this day. I am a generation removed. I can look back. I am the first one in my family. Look at me, I'm 47 years old. The first one in my family to receive a college degree. So what does that tell you? I come from poverty. We're still living the repercussions of slavery, and you're living off of our hard work, off of my ancestors' hard work, and that's why you have what you have and we have nothing.
You know something, I left that message for you to answer. I was going to answer that, but I think it was only apropos that you do it because you are one of the leaders in the movement. In fact, tell us a little bit about what you're going to be doing pretty soon.
I'm actually not a leader. There are no leaders in the movement.
Let's stop. Stop.
There are no leaders in this movement.
Let me stop you for a second, Tamara. And if there are no leaders, I'm going to tell you something that I would like to ask you humbly to take to Kentucky when you go. Well, first tell us about Kentucky, then I'll ask you.
Okay, so October 4th and 5th will be the first ADOS conference. It'll be held in Louisville, Kentucky. It's Friday, October 4th and Saturday, October the 5th. It gives us an opportunity to talk about the struggle, the problems we have with housing, the wealth inequality, mass incarceration, the Black vote, Black economics. It'll be a full conference so that we can start to hash out how we address and attack these issues that we're still plagued with today.
Okay, and I appreciate you for doing that, and I appreciate that you're going to do that. I do not appreciate that you imply the ADOS movement is leaderless, because every movement has to have a leadership in some form. And hear me out, please. Hear me out, please. I saw you about to get talking. I was a member of the Occupy Wall Street movement. And we had the way we implemented things with the form of it was a leaderless group, technically speaking. It couldn't function, and it would have never lasted. Some of the people are going to kill me for saying this. But when I went to meetings, both for Occupy Houston, Occupy Kingwood, which is the one that we ran here in Kingwood, ran differently in that it was more protest kind of a thing. But the Occupy Houston and all the Occupies I attended, San Diego, Providence, and all these other Occupies around the world, around the country. The one thing I noticed is it was unworkable. And I went to at least 12, 15 different encampments. I flew all over to these encampments. And they all suffered from the same problems, in my humble opinion. And that is, leaders were neutered. In other words, there were a lot of people there that were, some of us are leaders. And when I speak about leaders, I'm not talking about go do this or go do that. I'm talking about know how to organize people and get them working together. Because leaders weren't allowed to step out and do that, I think that was instrumental in bringing down the movement. Just my humble opinion. Now, you are a leader. And my point is, don't be neutered. Don't know if that is politically correct to say to a woman, so forgive me if it isn't. But don't be neutered when you go out there and there are things that need to get done. That's what I'm saying. That's all.
And I'm a doer. So just if something needs to get done, I will jump in and I will do my part to help get it done. But this movement doesn't actually have true leaders. It was started by Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore. So it has there has been some ahead to it. But as far as what needs to be done, we'll have to come back to our prospective states and actually get things done. So I am here in the state of Georgia, and I have been very active with getting the word out about what ADOS is and holding our representatives here accountable to not just one people, but all people. And particularly right now, ADOS, Black people, we're on the verge of being a permanent underclass.
Tamara, we got to get out of here, but beforehand, I need to tell you what some of these folks are saying. Lee Grant says, seems that affirmative action, Section 8, housing assistance, racial quotas, etc., are forms of reparations. No, they're not. And I know you have a lot of words for that, but we don't have the time to go in. I just want to let you know what they're saying. After the flood says, go occupy your country. I don't know exactly what that means, ADOS. So I kind of figure that is like go home. That is like the natives telling the original settlers, go back to your country. So let's kind of get some perspective there, you know. It's like somebody saying, don't speak Spanish in this country because, learn the language. When you came, did you learn how to speak the native language? I don't think so. So let's be frank here. Okay, now Masticator. Since Tamara blames her life on slavery, I would guess she lost her election 3 times is also a fault of she never, I'm not going to let you answer that one. I'm going to defend you on that one. She never, ever said that. There are reasons why she lost the 3rd election, and we are all quite well aware of. In fact, I've written about it. Maywood says, I too was part of Occupy, and we thought of ourselves as being leaderful. Maywood, sometime we got to talk about that. I don't have the time right now, but I love the way you said that. I love the way you said that. I don't know if you're hitting my concept or not, but the way you said that was beautiful. Lee Grant, Tamara said she was defeated by whiteness. You got to answer that one, though. We got to leave, but you got to answer that real quickly. Did you say you were defeated by whiteness?
I never said I was defeated by whiteness, but I was defeated by, we'll leave it alone, Egberto.
Yeah, some other time.
I can see where we're going to jump off the deep end, and we're not going.
Also, JSY Occupy is still around. It may spread out and not as visibly active, but the people are still out there and involved. By the way, May, I believe in, look, I am an Occupy guy. I'm a lefty. I believe in all these things. Let's talk about that the next show where we can have more time, but I got to go to the interview that I did today. Tamara, it has been great as usual having you here on Wednesdays. I'll see you in a couple Wednesdays. Again, I wish you much luck in Kentucky. Give me a closer.
All right. You can find us every Friday at right here on Facebook, YouTube at Tamara for Georgia. And Egberto, Kentucky is going to be quite exciting. Be ready to be on the broadcast Friday. Egberto joins us every Friday for National Political Update, and he will be having some great conversations this Friday with my co-host. I'm actually going to a NATO conference, so I won't be there on Friday. But you should have fun with my co-host, Egberto.
Okay, I will have fun with your co-host. Thank you so kindly, Tamara, and you have a wonderful rest of the day. Let me continue with this show and get that interview on, okay?
Have a good one. Thank you, everybody.
Have a good one now. Hey, folks, we are going to continue the show with a great show for you. Love you guys all. Look, I interviewed a man, a professor, doctor that I am not, let me tell you how good this guy is. I am not sure if this guy is a liberal or if this guy is a progressive. I mean, reading the preamble to his book kind of gives me an inclination, okay? But if you look at the text of his work in the book, it is right down to the data. And I have to respect that completely. And I think you will as well. But you know what? I've just noticed that as I am speaking here, I didn't cue the video. So as I am speaking to you, I am cueing our video to make sure that I can bring you the rest of the show. Anyway, please go ahead and listen to Dr. Matt Grossman. I think you will enjoy this interview. Welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. My name is Egberto Willies. I'm honored to be with Dr. Matt Grossman, who's the director of the Institute for Public Policy and Social Research and also an associate professor of political science at Michigan State University, as well as a fellow at the Niskanen Center. Welcome aboard, Dr. Matt Grossman, author of Red States Blues. I love the name, Red States Blues. How are you doing this morning?
Doing well. Good to be with you.
Excellent. Before we get started, let's put your book aside. Let's put the theme of your book aside. And I just want to ask a question about what happened yesterday. What are your thoughts implicitly?
Well, it is certainly momentous to see the House moving forward with impeachment after a long period of sort of build-up to what looked like nothing happening. We saw a relatively instant switch on the part of the Democratic leadership in response to the new allegations surrounding Ukraine. Still seems unlikely that Donald Trump will be removed from office before the next year's election, but it will certainly be interesting to see. I actually got to be in the Senate chamber for Bill Clinton's trial in the 90s. So it's also bringing back memories of that to me.
It almost seems like a switch turned and they got some information they weren't expecting that none of us yet know, because suddenly it seems like they got a whole lot of spine.
They did. I mean, I think it is helpful to have a new set of allegations to kind of get people off the idea that this is the same set of things that we've been discussing for the last few years. So it could be that. It also seemed to strike a chord with the national security establishment in particular. And so it could be that is what moved some of those members over.
Well, that's interesting. Just wanted to hear your point of view of that. Anyhow, Red State Blues, the not so special interests artists of the possible and campaigns and elections. Amazing. Let me ask you a few questions first about why you wrote the book. Most people are of the belief that all these states are now, too many states are now under control of Republicans, and they did a good job of doing it. I think the premise of your book is, so what?
Yeah, I mean, Republicans moved from control of only 3 states in the early 1990s to 26 as of last year. So there was sort of an opportunity to say, what have they accomplished with all of that political control? It's clear that they've been good at staying in power over an extended period. And some of that did involve policies like redistricting and trying to defund unions and trial lawyers. So some of those efforts clearly bore fruit in terms of staying in power. But they, of course, professed an ideological agenda for smaller government, for lower taxes, for social traditionalism, all kinds of things that we might expect they had an opportunity to achieve with their high degree of power. And the main message is that they really didn't make it very far in terms of trying to change the structure of government in order to reduce its size, in order to roll back social liberalism, or really kind of any of their professed policy agenda items. And what they did pass tended to have not very large effects on the ground. So abortion and gun policies changed in all of the states that they controlled, but abortion rates and gun ownership rates really were not affected by Republican control of state government.
You know, I wrote a post several times that if you really wanted the effects of Republican policies, you should try living in a blue state, because you've made a very important mention on things like abortions. It's not only abortions, but marriages, all the things that these guys look at from what they consider moral standpoints, or the things being lived in the blue states, almost see it stating that more progressive policies lead to the moral outcomes they're looking for. I don't know, but I mean, if you look at the data, it seems like that is what it says. Now,
I would say Republicans have a little bit of response, which is, the things that Democrats claim to care about are often worse, and it seems to be worse in blue states. Things like inequality, for example, and so they have some ways to respond.
Actually, that is a pretty good observation. Look at New York City, right? New York City is one of the cities with the largest income and wealth disparity. So, I mean, touche. I guess it's always dependent on from what point of view you're looking at something that actually makes sense. Now, if you were to look at what the biggest success is for, let's say, Republican or conservative control in any state, what would you consider that to be?
Well, I think I guess it depends on how you define success. But one measure
success means success meaning relative to the policies you expound for.
Yeah, I think for one big thing that should be considered a success from the conservative point of view is blocking the expansion of Medicaid under the Affordable Care Act in 14 states. That's the largest state program. It has direct effects on the ground, and so from the perspective of the conservatives' goals, that should be viewed as a success. On the other hand, if you look at the trend is that 36 states did expand Medicaid, so overall policy in that area was still moving in a liberal direction under conservative control of the states. If we want to look at conservative effects across states, I think the biggest success story for them would be charter schools and vouchers, the movement toward educational choice, which occurred in Democratic states as well as Republican states, and sort of moved policy rightward on education policy.
You mentioned charter school, and I kind of have that sort of brings up a bad taste in my mouth all of the times, because interestingly, what you've also noticed is that right here in blue states or states controlled by progressives, charter schools are also things that are pushed by progressives many a time, specifically in places like inner cities, etc. And we know what the outcomes generally are. So if I were to take your book on when you make the statement that look at the types of policies that change in red states, how much different are they from let's say in the liberal state? It seems to me that we coalesce in one place, and I'm just going to throw this out at you. Ultimately, both parties work for the benefit of the specific success of corporations, the socialization of corporations, if you will.
Well, I don't know if all the patterns fit that mold. I think there has been a lot of bipartisanship. To your point on charter schools and vouchers, another area where states have moved together is criminal justice, where all states kind of locked them up and threw away the key to start, and then nearly all states have actually sort of started to see a little bit of a liberalization of criminal justice policy to move away from mass incarceration during the last 10 years. Even under the Trump administration, which is a little bit surprising. So I don't think all of those trends are explainable by corporate power. But one of the things you do notice is that these local interest groups in the states still matter. And even when it comes to, say, expanding liberal policies, like under the Medicaid expansion that we just talked about, one of the big successes or indicators of whether that succeeded was whether the local hospitals were strongly in favor and had enough power to move Republican governors to support Medicaid expansion. So even when it comes to ostensibly liberal policies, the support from local corporate actors certainly matters.
I don't recall in the book, did you examine how that applied to South Carolina at all?
In South Carolina?
Yeah.
There's not Medicaid expansion in particular.
They didn't. It's somehow the pressure, from what I had understand up to a few months ago. I had another interviewee. It hadn't been very successful in doing that. So
there are a lot of places where they had lots of the corporate community together and still were unable to pass that. You also see that in transportation funding, where often the Chamber of Commerce is in favor of moving more taxes and more spending on roads, and they're not able to achieve that. There's also, you bring up South Carolina, there still is a Southern exceptionalism in the U.S. where these Southern states they were quite conservative under Democrats. They're also quite conservative under Republicans. And they have the smallest state governments. They're the slowest to move in lots of different policy areas. And so there's a lot of maps of American politics and policymaking where the South still stands out.
And amazingly, it shows in quite a bit, right? I mean, a little bit off your book. This isn't mentioned in your book, but I want your opinion because, again, you're a political science expert. All the data shows that conservative states, from an educational standpoint, from a wealth standpoint, from a dependency standpoint, fares much worse than the vast majority of blue states. Why isn't that more of an issue? Why isn't that something that is promoted more to these people so that they, in fact, would realize that just maybe their policies are incorrect?
Well, I didn't find a whole lot of relationship between Republican or Democratic control of the states and those kinds of outcomes. You certainly can see a lot of associations. So, like we said, we can say right now Republican states have higher divorce, all kinds of family outcomes that seem inconsistent with their professed views. Democratic states have
income inequality.
Or inequality. They have some difficulties that are inconsistent with their professed views. But that doesn't mean that it was state party control that caused those differences.
So you're changing causality with what's actually
So we don't, for example, the southern states are just behind in lots of those indicators, and they were behind when they were controlled by Democrats, and they're still behind when they're controlled by Republicans. And so when we try to look at did a change in leadership, say the election of a Democratic governor instead of a Republican governor, or vice versa, did that change those indicators over time? We just don't find as much evidence that it did.
So that would change quite a bit of narrative here. Let me see if I understand exactly what you're saying. You're saying that in as much as the statement may be true, causality may have nothing to do with ideology?
Well, it's just that there are certain states that are going to be high and low on various indicators, and most of that is very stable over time and is true under Democratic and Republican control of those states. And so,
go ahead.
Once you try to differentiate, let's say, when Michigan has had a Republican governor versus when it has had a Democratic governor. Do we see changes associated with that change in leadership? We just don't find as much evidence that these underlying social indicators move with the political control of the states.
But you said political control, not ideological control, because and I want to clarify this, is maybe correct myself here. Earlier, I think you stated that even the southern states have always been conservative states, whether under Democratic control or Republican control.
Policy.
Oh, right. Actually, under conservative they've always been conservative, irrespective of the party.
Yes.
Now, the question then is, it's not necessarily political control. Is there have you seen an ideological component versus a political component for the success of any particular state?
You can see that in individual policies. So, for example, we talked about Medicaid expansion has clear effects on things like inequality, on health bankruptcy, racial inequality, lots of differences. And so you can show that effect. But when you kind of add it all up and you say, did the states fare better under Republican control or Democratic control? You see less evidence. And part of the reason for that is that the states didn't move overwhelmingly liberal or overwhelmingly conservative under Republican or Democratic control.
That makes a lot of sense. That clarifies quite a bit. Appreciate that. Now, what can liberals learn? Because I think conservatives in general are much better at messaging, are much more effective at reaching people. I mean, you can look at books, the Kansas book, I don't remember the full name of it, and all these different books that shows you that they are better at touching to the carnality of people. What can liberals do to get there in the right manner?
Well, I guess I would clarify that conservatives are better at selling a broad ideological message. That doesn't mean liberals have no strengths. One of their strengths is in kind of making the debate about individual policy issues. So Americans tend to hold conservative attitudes about the size and scope of government in general, but they hold very liberal attitudes when we start to talk about specific policy issues like education, like healthcare, like criminal justice, anything. And so it's often actually liberals are sort of better off in any individual policy debate and kind of narrowing it and making it just about, should we help these folks who are in need right now? Should we try to punish these bad actors? They tend to win those debates on individual policy grounds. It's just that they never kind of advance the more generic argument that government can solve problems, that it's the role of government to try to redistribute income from the rich to the poor, that social change can be good, that diversification is a good trend. We don't hear those kind of in general terms, and so Americans continue to hold these kind of broad conservative attitudes, even though they really don't match their individual policy opinions. So that is good for conservatives in elections, I would say, but bad for conservatives in governing. So once they get into power and they say, okay, you wanted small governments and now we're going to reduce school funding, that is extremely unpopular. Now we're going to take away health benefits from people who currently receive them, also very unpopular. So that is kind of the conservative difficulty. I think the liberal difficulty is adding up all of these individual policies, all of these social groups that are part of the Democratic coalition, and saying, we actually have a broader vision to sell you on the role of government in society. They've never succeeded in doing that.
Now, so what would you consider the socioeconomic impact of where we are right now? The socioeconomic impact of exactly what you've just said, right? One group knows how to govern, the other group does not necessarily know how to put it into practice. What is the outcome of that reality?
Well, I think the outcome, the good news for liberals is that we have these liberalizing trends in public policy. Government tends to take on new problems over time. It tends to spend more. It tends to regulate more. But it does so slowly and maybe not enough to counteract the forces that liberals are trying to solve. So take climate change, for example. If you look at the action in the states, it's actually been mostly to try to encourage alternative energy, for example. But obviously, it's been nowhere near large enough to actually move the needle on climate change. So liberals' difficulty is they can win these kind of little incremental battles pretty regularly, but maybe not enough to kind of change these broad outcomes that they are trying to address. Minimum wage, for example. The direction in the states is actually toward a higher minimum wage, but it's nowhere near enough to address rising economic inequality. Now, we do get a chance to see what will happen now because Democrats had their best election in a while last year. And so we have 6 new states that are fully Democratic controlled, and they are moving quite a bit. New Mexico, for example, has increased its budget pretty considerably by about 10% in the first year, is addressing all kinds of social and economic
medical,
Yeah. And so there is a chance to see whether the new Democratic majorities might be able to move faster than either set of states has in the past.
Well, let me tell you what I'm really impressed with you, Professor. There are several times I pretty much try to get specific on saying, the left has this so right and the wrong has this, the right has this so wrong, and you never once took that on. I mean, that is what I call a researcher. I really appreciate that, and that makes what I do quite a bit better because it forces me to look at things in a complete way. So I want to thank you for doing that. Now, what are Democratic controlled states likely to pass when we come on board? I'm making the assumption right now that we're going to get quite a few more states that are going to flip in this next election. I think I could be all wrong, but I have a hunch based on where I see things going, and this is before this impeachment talk, that there's going to be a very good election for Democrats in 2020. Assuming that I'm right, what are those things that you think will get done in immediacy?
Well, so sorry, I can't assume, but back
I know.
electoral side for a moment. I do think it's worth pointing out Democrats had a great election last year, but they still really only moved back in the states about to the level they were before the 2014 election. They didn't come close to remaking their gains in 2010. And some of the places, I mean, Republican gains.
You mean 26, right? 6.
Yeah. And so they suffered a huge loss in 2010 that they've not anywhere near come back to retaining. And some of that is pretty long term, right? It's very difficult to see them regaining control of a state like Oklahoma or South Dakota, where they used to be regularly competitive and now they're not competitive at all. So some of the change in the states might be permanent and more difficult to counteract with electoral outcomes. The other thing is that election gains tend to come when the party is out of the presidency, right? So Republicans made their big gains under Barack Obama. Democrats are making their big gains under Donald Trump. And that makes it difficult policy-wise to move things in your direction, right? If Republicans made gains when the federal government was passing Obamacare and passing the stimulus package, it was more difficult for them, just as under Democratic control in the states, they're facing an opposed administration under Donald Trump. So the difficulty is kind of, can you get both the presidency and control of the states at the same time? That hasn't happened lately. And so it's been difficult for either party to make big policy moves at both the federal and state level at the same time. In terms of what they're passing, it is pretty across the board. It is not limited to social issues, although you do see changes in abortion laws, gun laws, environmental laws. You also see a lot of pure economic change, even changes in taxes, changes in regulation. And so I think Democrats just have a very long list of policies that they're trying to pass, a lot of constituencies that they are trying to satisfy. And it's difficult to do that all at once, but they are working their way down the list.
Now, my question again is, do you think this is something that they can be successful at?
I think they certainly will move some policies incrementally leftward with Democratic control. The difficulty has been, are those policies big enough to actually change outcomes on the ground? And they have not been. So, for example, Democrats have not passed universal health care in any state. They have not passed a environmental program on par with the Green New Deal or anything to address climate change in the states. But they have expanded healthcare coverage in the states. They have expanded alternative energy in the states. So they will be successful, I think, at continuing that kind of incremental moves leftward. The question is whether that will actually change outcomes on the ground.
The name of the book, Red State Blues, How the Conservative Revolution Stalled in States. For those of you who follow Politics Done Right, you know I loved the book. Because actually, look, I mean, you're right. I hate to use the word right down the middle, but this is a book that I think every single American citizen, whether Republican, Democrat, whether liberal, conservative, I think it's important that you read this book because it will give you a whole lot of perspective. It won't only give you a whole lot of perspective, it'll make you pragmatic, and it'll also take a little bite away from that twinge that you have. Like, you know, I tried to move this professor all the way. He didn't bite. Look, let me tell you, Professor, it's been my honor to have you on Politics Done Right. I want to thank you for a very well-written book. I think it's an important book, more so than probably most just looking at the name would think. And I think it's a damn good job. And we need more what I'd call straight talking out of a book like this that even a very progressive person can look at and say, my God, that was a fair book. And I think it's something everybody can see. Dr. Matt Grossman, any closing words you want to have before we close out?
Well, thanks so much. I just hope that the liberal audience will understand that from the conservative perspective, they passed a whole bunch in the states, but they've kind of been unable to change the size and scope of government overall. And so while liberals can be disappointed that they don't get to pass more of the things that they want to pass, I think it is helpful to understand kind of the perspective of the other side and why both sides may think that they're kind of losing this epic battle in American politics.
Dr. Matt Grossman, author of Red State Blues, How the Conservative Revolution Stalled in the United States, Director of Institute of Public Policy and Social Research, and Associate Professor at Michigan State University. It was my pleasure to have you on Politics Done Right, and you have a wonderful rest of your writing career.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed that interview. I think it was, why am I getting an echo? Anyhow, I think it was an important book. And what we need to go forward is to tell you, first of all, thank you for listening to the show. It came right up to the 3-minute mark, so I have to do something real quickly. Folks, if you're just joining us, please remember that we do need your support. Please go to patreon.com/politicsdoneright. Again, that is patreon.com/politicsdoneright, and support independent media. We want to be able to bring what most people are not bringing to you. Nobody's going to give you an extended conversation with a professor that has a book that you really can't tell where it is. He just tells it as it is. So please go to patreon.com/politicsdoneright, or you can just go to politicsdoneright.com. politicsdoneright.com, and support the show, support what we do here. It's been my pleasure to have you. I want to thank the professor for having been here with us. It is very important that we get this information, because when you have good data, you can actually get things done. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right, and you know how I end this baby. I am what? Out!
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes We the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is, at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.